When a woman is protected by God, she doesn't always see it first, she feels it. There's no thunderclap, no warning siren. But suddenly, she loses interest in a relationship that once captivated her. A person she trusted shows their shadow, and it doesn't destroy her. Instead, it clarifies her. This protection doesn't arrive with loud announcements. It often shows up in silence, in intuition, in unexpected endings. And the more connected she is to her inner stillness, the faster she hears the whispers of divine guidance. This is not for you. You see, protection from evil people isn't always about who God keeps away, it's about who He makes you become. A woman who listens to her body, who trusts her peace more than her fears, who values her energy more than fleeting attention. And so the real power is not in being saved at the last moment. It's in becoming the kind of woman evil cannot reach. When a woman cultivates stillness, she cultivates strength in a world that constantly demands her reaction, her opinion, her urgency. Choosing stillness is not passive. It is deeply powerful. It is a decision to stay connected to what is true, rather than be tossed around by what is loud. And more than that, stillness is the first gate through which divine protection flows. Stillness allows the mind to separate truth from noise. Science shows that the human brain is wired to detect patterns. But under stress, whether emotional, relational, or environmental, our ability to recognize subtle patterns diminishes. We misread intentions. We overlook red flags. We extend trust where none has been earned. But when a woman is still, when she is calm in her body and quiet in her thoughts, she begins to sense what words and actions cannot always explain. Imagine a woman who is caught in the early stages of a relationship. The man she is seeing is charming, generous with his compliments, and seemingly attentive. But over time, she begins to notice a pattern. Her energy feels drained after spending time with him. She feels anxious before calls, yet can't explain why. He says all the right things, yet something feels off. Now, if her mind is busy, racing with ideas of romantic ideals, fears of loneliness, or pressure to settle down, she will override these subtle cues. But if she is calm, if she has learned the art of observing rather than reacting, she will pause. And in that pause, clarity arises. She realizes that her body is detecting what her mind cannot yet articulate. She understands that her peace is not being honored in this connection. That moment, when she chooses peace over fantasy, is divine protection. This phenomenon is deeply supported by neuroscience. The brain's amygdala, the emotional processor, can detect emotional danger milliseconds before the conscious mind forms a thought. This is why some people make us feel uneasy, even if we can't logically explain it. A woman who lives in constant inner noise misses this early signal. But a woman grounded in stillness hears it clearly, like a quiet bell ringing in her heart. In Eastern teachings, this stillness is the gateway to inner knowing, not knowledge, but knowing. Knowledge is what you read, what others teach you. Knowing is what you feel in your bones without needing permission. It is the calm voice that says, you don't need to prove your worth here. Or, you are not safe here, even if everything looks perfect. Stillness makes space for that voice to rise. In relationships, this becomes a vital force of protection. Emotional manipulators thrive on reaction. The moment you are reactive, they gain control. But a calm woman cannot be easily baited. Her stillness frustrates those who want chaos. It confuses those who want control. She does not respond to every message with urgency. She is not quick to defend herself over baseless accusations. She does not rush to explain, to fix, or to please. This calmness is not a performance. It is rooted in emotional discipline. A story often told in spiritual traditions speaks of a sage and a scorpion. The sage sees a scorpion drowning and tries to save it, but each time he reaches out, the scorpion stings him. A passerby asks, "Why do you keep trying to save it when it keeps hurting you?" The sage replies, "Because the scorpion is following its nature, and I am following mine." The calmness of the sage is not naivety, it is mastery. He knows his center. He does not act from pain or pride, he acts from clarity. Likewise, a woman protected by divine forces understands her emotional nature, but she does not allow it to overtake her decisions. She knows how to feel deeply without becoming emotionally entangled. She knows that feeling anxious is not a reason to stay in a situation and fix it. Sometimes the anxiety is not hers. It is her body warning her of energy that does not align. And to heed this signal, she must remain still long enough to hear it. Consider how this plays out in modern relationships. A woman is dating a man who oscillates between charm and withdrawal. One day he is present, another day cold. He says he's busy. He says he's just overwhelmed. But her soul feels the inconsistency, like waves slamming against a fragile shore. Without stillness, she may chase after him, attempting to earn consistency through performance. But with stillness, she will instead observe the pattern. She will notice how much of her energy goes into managing someone else's mood. She will ask the deeper question: why am I trying to make someone stay who does not choose to be consistent with me? And in that question, her freedom begins. Stillness also teaches her that silence is a response, that absence speaks, that discomfort is a message. She no longer needs drama to recognize the truth. Her peace is the litmus test. If it is disturbed, she investigates, not the other person's behavior, but her own alignment. This is what emotional self-mastery looks like in real life. It is not a rejection of feeling, but a refinement of how feelings are used. Not every emotional pull deserves a response. Not every impulse needs to become a conversation. Not every story needs closure. Stillness teaches the strength of detachment, not from love, but from illusion. And when a woman lives like this, evil people don't find her appealing. They find her frustrating, because their games require reaction, and she offers none. There's a quiet confidence in a woman who doesn't need to rush, a woman who can observe without absorbing, who can sit with discomfort without numbing it. She becomes unreadable to manipulators and unshakable to those who try to trigger her. This is divine protection, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Her energy is not easily moved, and her spirit remains grounded. And yet, this kind of stillness is not built overnight. It is trained, just as the body becomes strong through repeated tension and release. The emotional body becomes strong through repeated practice. Stillness is learned in the moments you want to scream, but choose to breathe. In the arguments where you want to prove your worth, but choose to walk away with dignity. In the invitations to chaos that you decline, not because you don't feel it, but because you now value your peace more than your pride. In this way, stillness is not weakness. It is a sign that a woman has entered a sacred alliance with her own soul. From this stillness, something beautiful emerges in tension. A woman who is still can begin to live not from fear or desperation, but from clear purpose. And that brings us to the next layer of divine protection: purity of intention. Purity of intention is not about being perfect. It is about being sincere. It is the quiet strength of a woman who means what she says and says what she means. Her motives are clean. She does not manipulate. She does not seduce to trap. She does not use her wounds as weapons. She may be healing, but she is honest. And this sincerity creates an invisible field of protection around her. Why? Because evil people, those who feed off confusion, chaos, and distortion, cannot easily penetrate sincerity. When a woman has no hidden agenda, she is energetically closed off to manipulation. She may still attract attempts, but those attempts don't land. Because she is not playing the same game. Think of energy as language. Manipulators speak in double meanings. They say, "I miss you," when they want control. They say, "You're too sensitive," when you confront them with truth. But a sincere woman speaks only one language, the language of clarity. This makes her immune to hidden traps because she doesn't respond to bait. Her purity is her protection. In psychological terms, people with high emotional congruence are less likely to be manipulated. They don't say yes when they mean no. They don't pretend to be fine when they're not. And they don't tolerate dishonesty, even in the name of connection. This clarity repels those who seek to exploit ambiguity. There is a story of a woman who entered a new workplace and quickly became known for her sincerity. She was kind, but not overly familiar, respectful, but not easily impressed. Some colleagues tried to get close to her quickly. Flattery, shared gossip, subtle digs at others, but she never engaged. She smiled, kept her responses simple, and continued with her work. Over time, the people who had tried to manipulate her began to avoid her. Not because she was cold, but because she was clean. And manipulators thrive in murky waters. This woman's strength came not from being confrontational, but from being consistent. She did not need to expose others. Her integrity exposed them. She didn't have to defend her boundaries with anger. Her quiet refusal was enough. In relationships, this shows up as a woman who does not play roles. She does not shape, shift to become who someone wants. She shows up as she is. And because of this, those with honest intentions feel safe with her. And those with manipulative agendas feel uncomfortable. Her purity becomes a mirror, reflecting people back to themselves. And perhaps this is the most powerful kind of protection, not one that removes all danger, but one that makes danger reveal itself quickly. When a woman lives with pure intention, deception cannot linger. It is either transformed or it flees. This purity also gives rise to discernment. A woman who is sincere in herself can detect insincerity in others. She may not always understand the details, but she will feel the misalignment. It's a subtle tension, a strange inconsistency, a small lie hidden in a compliment. And because her own energy is clean, she recognizes when someone else's energy is not. That is divine protection in action, not from above, but from within. And let it be known, purity of intention is not naivety. It is not walking around with blind trust. It is choosing to be clean even when others are not. It is knowing you could play games, but choosing not to. It is the quiet courage of keeping your heart open without letting your guard down. A woman protected by divine energy is not without wounds, but she refuses to weaponize them. She may have been betrayed, but she has not become bitter. She may have been tested, but she is not cynical. She holds her pain like a lesson, not a license to harm. Such women are rare, and that is why they are protected, because they carry a light that cannot be faked, a clarity that cannot be taught, a sincerity that cannot be manipulated. Stillness and purity, together, they form the foundation of a protected life. Not a life without pain, but a life where pain does not shape identity. Not a life without trials, but a life where trials reveal strength. And as she walks through this world with these two energies guiding her, something begins to shift, not just in her, but around her. The people who once tried to confuse her become distant. The ones who want to grow, who seek truth, begin to draw near. The path becomes clearer, not because it is easy, but because she has become aligned. And this alignment is not accidental. It is the result of choosing to listen inwardly, to act with integrity, and to remain undisturbed in a disturbed world. The more she does this, the more protected she becomes. not in a way that makes her untouchable, but in a way that makes her unmistakably guided. There are moments in a woman's life when something inside whispers a warning, so quiet, yet so persistent, it cannot be ignored. She might not see a clear threat. The person standing in front of her may be smiling, polite, or even affectionate. But deep within her body, she feels an unease, a quiet tension, a dissonance she cannot explain. And that feeling, subtle but undeniable, is the early protection from something she does not yet consciously understand. This sense of inner warning is not fantasy. It is not insecurity. It is a deeply rooted intelligence that exists in every human being, particularly developed in those who have faced emotional or psychological harm and learned from it. In neuroscience, this is known as neuroception, the brain and body's capacity to detect safety or threat without conscious awareness. It's how your body can tense before your mind realizes something is off. This biological radar, when honored, often reveals what logic alone cannot. Imagine a woman preparing to meet someone she has been dating. They haven't had any arguments. Everything seems normal, even pleasant. But as she gets dressed, her body feels heavy. Her chest feels tight. She dismisses it at first. Maybe it's just stress. Maybe she didn't sleep well. She tries to override it with makeup, affirmations, or small distractions. But the discomfort lingers. When she arrives, his words are fine, but his eyes don't match. His presence doesn't feel the same. He laughs at her stories, but something inside her feels alone in his company. This is not paranoia. This is protection. Her body has picked up on subtle cues, changes in tone, shifts in behavior, micro-expressions that her conscious mind hasn't processed yet. Her emotional body, attuned through experience and reflection, is sounding an alarms. Pay attention. If she honors that feeling, if she chooses not to dismiss it, she may begin to see the truth unravel. Perhaps he's emotionally withdrawing. Perhaps he's begun to devalue her. Perhaps he has already crossed emotional lines elsewhere. But because she listened to that inner signal, she catches the misalignment early, before deeper damage is done. This is one of the most profound signs that a woman is divinely protected. She doesn't need loud signs to see the truth. She feels the tremors before the earthquake. And more importantly, she doesn't argue with what her body knows. She doesn't call her discomfort dramatic. She doesn't silence her intuition in order to stay polite. She understands that divine protection often whispers. It doesn't always come with flashing lights. Sometimes it simply removes your peace from a situation that no longer honors your spirit. In relationships, this ability becomes a quiet superpower. When a woman begins to trust her nervous system, not just her thoughts, she becomes more emotionally intelligent. She stops choosing based on charm or words alone. She observes how someone makes her feel consistently, not occasionally. She pays attention to patterns, not promises. A woman once shared that every time she was with her ex-partner, she felt as if she was shrinking. She couldn't explain it. He wasn't overtly cruel, but her laughter came less easily. Her creativity faded. Her joy became something she had to find, instead of something she naturally lived. At the time, she told herself it was just her own insecurities, that maybe she needed to do the inner work. But after the relationship ended and she slowly returned to herself, she realized something essential. It was not her insecurities. It was her soul reacting to an environment that was quietly toxic. She learned to trust that next time, if her spirit began to dim in someone's presence, she would no longer wait for proof. She would no longer wait to be broken in order to walk away. When a woman develops this connection to her internal warning system, she becomes more graceful in her departures. She doesn't need scandal to justify her exit. The loss of her peace is reason enough. This is a kind of maturity few reach. It requires self-trust. It requires the courage to leave without anger, to walk away without explanation, and to honor your discomfort without demanding others to understand it. There is a quote that says, "When something feels off, it is." That simple line, when lived deeply, can save years of emotional pain. But many don't listen, because listening means acting, and action sometimes means letting go before closure, before confirmation, before the story is complete. But when a woman is truly protected, she learns that early exits are not losses. They are redirections. This is where the fourth layer of protection reveals itself. When rejection, loss, or detachment comes, she does not cling or beg or chase. She does not interpret the end of a relationship as a statement about her worth. Instead, she views rejection as divine redirection. This shift in perspective is not only spiritually freeing, it's psychologically empowering. In psychology, the concept of cognitive reframing teaches that how we interpret events determines how we heal. When a woman views a man walking away not as a reflection of her inadequacy, but as a sacred pruning of what no longer serves her growth, she steps out of victimhood. She reclaims authorship of her life. And this is not denial. She still feels. She may cry. She may grieve. But she does not beg someone to stay who was not meant to stay. She does not confuse temporary connection with eternal purpose. And because of this, her heart becomes wiser, not harder. A woman once fell in love with a man who promised forever. They made plans, shared dreams, even discussed marriage. But slowly, his affection faded. Messages became cold. Presents turned into excuses. Then came the day he ended it, abruptly and without clarity. The pain was sharp, and for a while, she believed it was because she wasn't enough. But one evening, weeks after the silence had settled, she sat alone and asked herself a question. What would I have lost had he stayed? And the answers came one by one. Her self-respect, her voice, her peace. Slowly, she saw that the relationship had required her to shrink parts of herself, and that losing him was not the tragedy. It was the beginning of her restoration. Rejection, in this case, was not abandonment. It was divine intervention. In Eastern philosophy, there is a deep teaching: when the path is blocked, it is a message from life itself. That obstacle is not random. It is redirection. And the sooner we accept it, the faster we align with where we were meant to be. But many women delay their healing because they seek closure. They want to understand why someone left, why love was withdrawn, why promises were broken. But the truth is, closure often doesn't come from others. It comes from understanding yourself. And from recognizing that sometimes the most merciful thing the universe can do is take something from you that you would have never let go of on your own. This is especially true in romantic relationships. A woman who is divinely protected does not idolize connection. She honors it, but she doesn't worship it. When someone leaves, she doesn't try to rewrite herself in order to be chosen again. She honors the departure as sacred timing. And instead of chasing the person, she turns inward to ask, what did this experience teach me about my own boundaries, desires, and standards? From this place, she begins to rebuild, not from desperation, but from design. A woman once said that her greatest heartbreak became her greatest awakening. Because when she stopped trying to make someone love her, she finally made space to love herself. And in that space, new people entered. People who didn't drain her, who didn't question her worth, who didn't give half love on their best days. She saw clearly in hindsight that the man who left didn't reject her. He freed her. And this is what happens when rejection is no longer seen as failure, but as guidance. A woman who sees life this way becomes untouchable in the best sense of the word. She may still feel grief, but it doesn't shatter her. She may still miss someone, but she doesn't lose herself trying to win them back. She accepts what life removes and trusts that what remains is meant to be refined, not abandoned. This trust becomes her foundation. She no longer sees endings as evidence of inadequacy. Instead, she views them as spiritual housekeeping. Life is clearing the room for what is real, and because she does not resist the clearing, she is blessed with clarity. That clarity becomes a new form of power, because she no longer holds on to what is fading. She lets go with grace, and the moment she lets go, she becomes available to what is aligned. And alignment is not just romantic. It is spiritual, emotional, energetic. When a woman is aligned, everything changes. How she speaks, what she allows, what she believes she deserves. Even more, she no longer makes her heart a proving ground. She does not fight to be loved. She does not perform to be accepted. She understands that those who are meant for her will not require her to betray herself. And those who are not meant for her will leave, not because she is unworthy, but because her soul is being preserved for something higher. And so, the relationship that ends is not the end, it is the turning point. A woman who lives this way begins to see every rejection, every departure, every disappointment as a refining fire. Painful, yes, but also purifying. It burns away illusion. It strips off codependency. It reveals strength. It teaches discernment. And in time, what remains is not a broken woman, but a woman who is unbreakable. Not because she is hardened, but because she is aligned. She walks differently now. She no longer fears loss. She no longer negotiates her standards. She no longer allows someone else's confusion to create chaos within her. When something leaves, she lets it. When something feels wrong, she believes it. When something doesn't honor her peace, she releases it. And that release is not weakness, it is wisdom. Because when a woman is truly protected, it's not about who stays. It's about who her spirit no longer needs. It's not about the love she can get. It's about the peace she can keep. And that peace, when guarded, when prioritized, when honored, is more valuable than any promise made by lips that do not match the heart. So she chooses differently now. She chooses silence over drama, peace over passion, integrity over attraction. And in doing so, she becomes a sanctuary, not just for herself, but for the kind of love that is sacred, steady, and true. A woman who knows how to keep her boundaries. Without anger, without chaos, and without guilt, is a woman who has stepped into her quiet power. She does not announce her limits loudly. She lives them. And in doing so, she becomes someone who does not need to explain herself to be understood. There is a misconception that strong boundaries must be aggressive. That to protect yourself, you must be confrontational, dominant, or emotionally detached. But the opposite is true. The strongest boundaries are not loud. They are calm, consistent, and rooted in self-respect. A woman who maintains her boundaries without bitterness does not shut people out. She simply doesn't allow people to enter where they don't belong. She doesn't react in a way that drains her. She responds in a way that preserves her. Psychologically, boundaries are expressions of identity. They define where you end and another begins. When a woman lacks boundaries, she becomes entangled with others' emotions, expectations, and dysfunctions. She begins to shift in relationships, losing clarity on who she really is. But when she has healthy boundaries, she stops bleeding energy into people who are not meant to hold space for her heart. There's a story of a woman who always said yes. Yes to every phone call, even when she was tired. Yes to every favor, even when she was drowning in her own tasks. Yes to every invitation, even when her spirit longed for solitude. She feared being seen as selfish or unkind. She thought saying yes would make her loved, but instead it made her invisible to others and to herself. Over time, She noticed that her relationships lacked depth. People leaned on her, but never really knew her. They admired her generosity, but never offered the same in return. One day, after being emotionally exhausted by yet another one-sided exchange, she sat quietly and asked herself, "What am I afraid will happen if I start saying no?" The answer came clearly: they might leave. And then she asked the more important question: if they leave because I honor myself, why am I trying so hard to keep them? That was the day she began to shift. She started with small no's. She paused before replying. She checked in with her energy before committing. And to her surprise, she didn't become unloved. She became respected. The people who truly valued her adjusted. The ones who didn't fade away. But for the first time, she felt peace. Not because life became easier, but because she was no longer betraying herself for the sake of harmony. This is the beauty of boundaries. They are not walls. They are filters. They do not push people away. They allow the right people to come closer, while protecting the sacredness of your inner life. In relationships, boundaries are often tested subtly. A partner might cross emotional lines, not through cruelty, but through carelessness. They might joke about your insecurities, dismiss your dreams, or fail to show up when you need them most. If your boundaries are reactive, you'll explode in frustration after weeks of silence. But if your boundaries are healthy, you'll address it early with calm clarity. You'll say, "I don't feel safe when my feelings are minimized," instead of waiting until you're too hurt to speak gently. When a woman is centered in herself, she doesn't need anger to set limits. Her energy speaks for her. Her consistency sends the message. People begin to understand. This is a woman who honors herself, not in arrogance, but in alignment. This emotional discipline is not easy to cultivate. It requires unlearning. Many women are taught from a young age to prioritize others, to soften their voice, to seek approval. Boundaries feel like rebellion. But in truth, boundaries are restoration. They return you to yourself. One of the most powerful things a woman can say is, "This doesn't feel right to me." Not because it will change others, but because it honors the truth of her own experience. She stops seeking permission to protect her energy. She stops explaining why she can't give more than she has. She simply chooses herself, quietly and consistently. And over time, this creates a different kind of life. One where she is not constantly recovering from emotional overextension. One where her time is not consumed by those who drain her. One where she can actually hear her own thoughts, feel her own feelings, and live from her own truth. The world respects people who respect themselves. This is not pride, it is clarity. There's a quiet authority in someone who doesn't need to argue for their boundaries. They simply live them without apology. And when someone crosses a line, they don't attack or plead. They redirect, they detach, they return to peace. This is why people with clear boundaries often attract resistance at first. Those who benefited from your lack of limits will push back. But over time, the resistance fades, and what remains are relationships built on mutual respect. Boundaries are not meant to isolate you. They're meant to teach you how to love wisely. Not everyone is meant to sit at the table of your heart. Not everyone deserves access to your most vulnerable places. A protected woman knows this. And because she does, she doesn't open up out of loneliness. She opens up out of discernment. She doesn't say yes because she's afraid of being alone. She says yes because it aligns with her truth. This discernment becomes more powerful with time. She begins to recognize patterns early. She senses when someone only wants to take. She feels the weight of energy that disrupts her peace. She becomes immune to flattery and more attuned to consistency. Her boundaries at this point are not rigid. They are wise. She no longer builds them out of fear, but out of sacredness. A woman with clear, kind boundaries becomes deeply attractive, but not to everyone. She attracts those who are secure within themselves, those who don't fear her power, those who do not see her silence as rejection, but as presence. She no longer entertains people who require her to lose herself to be loved. This kind of energy cannot be faked. It comes from within. It's the result of choosing truth over approval again and again until it becomes your nature. And this is where the final layer of protection reveals itself. Her presence alone becomes uncomfortable for those with dark intentions. She doesn't have to speak. She doesn't have to point out deception. Her energy reveals it. Some people cannot stay in the presence of someone who sees clearly, not because she judges, but because her presence makes dishonesty too heavy to carry. The manipulator feels exposed. The liar becomes nervous. The game player becomes disoriented. Because this woman cannot be read in the way others can. She doesn't bite the bait. She doesn't mirror dysfunction. She stays still. And that stillness becomes a mirror. There's a quiet story about a woman who was invited to a social gathering. Among the attendees was a man known for being charming, persuasive, and deeply manipulative. He had a reputation for drawing people in, using flattery and emotional tactics to gain control. He approached her as expected, with charisma. He complimented her presence. He asked questions meant to draw her in. But she didn't respond with flirtation or flattery. She listened. She observed. She smiled gently, but offered no emotional hooks. She didn't mirror his energy. She didn't react. She remained calm, unmoved, anchored. After a few minutes, he became visibly uncomfortable. His charm began to falter. He excused himself. Later, someone asked her, "What did you do to make him leave so quickly?" She replied, "Nothing. I just didn't give him what he was looking for." What she gave instead was presence. Clean, unattached, clear. And that kind of presence repels darkness. This is not mystical. It is measurable. Emotionally attuned individuals emit a kind of energy that cannot be faked. Their nervous systems are regulated. Their emotions are clear. They are not desperate for attention or affection. They are whole. And those who operate from manipulation or deception cannot sustain connection with such individuals. The mismatch is too great. There's a deep discomfort. Evil feels in the presence of truth. It's like trying to breathe underwater. It doesn't work. And so, those with impure intentions exit. Not because they were pushed out, but because they couldn't stay. A woman who embodies this level of presence doesn't chase. She doesn't prove. She doesn't argue. She lives with integrity, and integrity does the work for her. Her stillness is not emptiness. It is refinement. It is the result of years spent listening inwardly instead of reacting outwardly. She trusts what her body knows. She respects her own time. She chooses not to dilute herself to be accepted by those who cannot meet her where she is. This kind of woman changes every room she enters, not because she tries to dominate it, but because her energy brings clarity. Those who are aligned feel safe with her. Those who are not feel exposed, and this is not her responsibility. It is the natural result of living in truth. There is a quiet radiance in someone who knows who they are, honors what they feel, and protects what they carry. She doesn't wear her worth like armor. She wears it like breath, natural, consistent, essential. This is why she doesn't explain herself constantly. She doesn't need to. Her life is the explanation. Her peace is the evidence. Her presence is the response. And so, without confrontation, without revenge, without war, she is protected, not by force, but by alignment, not by noise, but by stillness, not by escaping darkness, but by being so full of light that darkness cannot stay. She is not feared because she is dangerous. She is respected because she is deeply rooted. And in this rootedness, she finds her freedom. She stops asking, will they like me? And starts asking, does this align with who I am? She no longer lets others write her value. She writes it with every choice she makes, every no she says, every moment she chooses peace over performance. She becomes a woman who walks through life unafraid. Not because life won't test her, but because she no longer betrays herself to pass those tests. And that is where the real protection lies. Not outside her, but within. When a woman walks through life guided not just by intuition, but by alignment with a deeper sacred awareness, something remarkable begins to unfold. Her presence becomes less about reaction and more about resonance. She no longer feels the need to chase approval, explain her worth, or prove her goodness. Instead, she becomes deeply rooted, quietly powerful. She is not untouchable in the arrogant sense, but untouchable in the spiritual one, because she knows where her boundaries lie and who she truly belongs to. To be protected from evil is not merely about being spared from harm. It is about being led away from what does not nourish your soul. It is about recognizing the early signs, not because you are suspicious, but because you are sensitive. Sensitive to energy, sensitive to peace, sensitive to the subtle voice within that whispers, this path is not for you. And that whisper, when heard and obeyed, becomes your armor. There is no need for dramatic escape stories when you're living in clarity. Evil rarely gets a foothold in a life governed by self-awareness. The more you clean the windows of your inner world, the more clearly you can see the truth in others. This clarity becomes a shield, an invisible but immovable force that filters who enters your space, who influences your heart, and who earns your trust. You stop mistaking chaos for passion or manipulation for love, and in that wisdom, you're protected. So protection is not something you must pray to descend like a sudden miracle. It is something you can grow into. You become the kind of woman who is not only watched over, but who also walks as if she knows she is. You develop habits, thoughts, and relationships that act as spiritual fences, gates that open only to the ones who come with peace in their hands, not destruction hidden in their smiles. In this way, a woman becomes a force of calm in a world that often mistakes loudness for strength. Her decisions are deliberate, not desperate. Her emotions are disciplined, not suppressed. And her love is never transactional. It is a gift she gives wisely, not something she uses to heal the wounds of others at the cost of her own. This is what it means to be protected. Not just by God, but with God, a life of alignment, clarity, and purpose, where every no is sacred, every silence intentional, and every step grounded in the awareness that you were never meant to merely survive evil. You were meant to walk so wisely that it cannot even find you.